Level with me. What are some simple ways to try role-playing in D&D? Welcome to Level With Me, the YouTube channel where we can level up our TTRPG experience together. My name is Will, and I've just remembered that I own a standing desk. Today, we're going to be discussing roleplay in Dungeons & Dragons. Again. In my last video, we discussed the benefits of role-playing and how it can help you, the table, and the dungeon master, so hopefully you thought that it would be fun to give it a go yourself. Today, we're going to be looking at different ways you could embrace your character and experience roleplay in small ways to help get you in their mindset and in turn, subliminally become slightly more invested in the stories that you are telling. What am I doing with my hands today? But before we jump into the video, just a reminder that we work with shared XP at this table, so any tips, tricks, or thoughts on the subject, leave them in the comments below to dish out some XP to the other players in our community, and I'll make sure to check them out as well. So, how can we dip our collective toes into roleplay? And yes, we do all have the same toes in this scenario, and I'm not apologizing for it. Just in small ways that can help influence your roleplay mindset and get you thinking like your character. Let's jump into it. Props. The smallest thing that you can do is simply to assign something that is suitable to your character, an item, a trinket, something that you only use when it's time to play. At the BBEG podcast, I had this specific tankard that I would drink from whenever we were recording, just so I could get into the fantasy mood, and I would only ever drink fantasy drinks from it, like coffee. Or Red Bull. For I long to be an Aarakocra. I have a prop for my character Harvard, who's a gambler in his spare time. I have this coin I got from EGX, an Oxventure coin, and I just sit and twiddle with it in my hands, through the sessions. My DM knew that I had this coin and actually made it an item in-universe, the 50-50 coin. I get to flip it once per day, and if it's a heads, I get advantage on the roll, and if it's a tails, I get disadvantage on the roll. If you look at the Critical Role cast, they don't often cosplay, and they use theatre of the mind for the vast majority of their scenes, apart from battle maps. However, what they do always have is themed tankards and dice trays and other accessories. I mean, they also have the set that's, designated to film in and looks like a fantasy tavern, but I'm gonna bet that we don't have the money to put a set in our living room. I definitely don't. Send help. Please. Please. But having specific trinkets that relate to your character and game is a simple and cheap way to get into roleplay. But do you know what's cheaper than that? Speaking in the first person. As I was typing this, I thought, where do we kind of draw the line? In-game, simply saying, I go and inspect the scratches on the bookcase is more personal than Altazar the Paladin goes and inspects the scratches on the bookcase. You see what I mean? Just by using the third person, you immediately put some distance between yourself and the story being told. When you read a book, does it not help you empathize and emote more with the main character when the author elects to use the first person pronouns rather than the third? My voice is really hurting. I've been singing all morning. I gotta release a song on this channel eventually. I have a D&D themed song that needs to go out. Anyway, so maybe you should be thinking about it in the third person, but then actioning it in the first person, because there's three ways it can go. The character's way, the first person way, the way it would be written in a book, the third person way, and the way that you, the player yourself, would go about it. This is the first way. You, the party, are resting after your hard-fought battle at the bandit camp where you successfully claim back the missing jewels, when suddenly, in walks a group of young thugs, and they approach the table with a practically aggravating swagger about them. They look you dead in the eye and say, "Oi, this is our table now. Move."
What would Altazar say?
I turn to these thugs and I say, "Please, friends, we are weary from our adventures. If you give us but 10 minutes to finish our refreshments, then we shall be out of your hair. Please take a perch at the bar, and I will endeavour to tell you when we vacate the table, and then you may lay claim to it. I shall be over soon." Then there's the book way, the fictional way, the third person way, which is when you dictate what your character would do instead of using those personal pronouns that we were talking about and becoming the character. They look you dead in the eye and say, "Oi, this is our table now. Move." Altazar the Paladin, he turns to the thugs and he says, "Gentlemen, we are almost finished here. Give us," and he turns around to look at the rest of the party, 5 or 10 minutes and then we shall be on our way. But if I were to think what I Will the player would do in that situation. Maybe I'm carrying around the weight of the day. Maybe this is how that scenario would play out.
They look you dead in the eye and say, "Oi, this is our table now. Boo." "Oh, just don't be a mate, not today. Stop, just don't be a
Because I curse like a sailor on leave. Sorry. But do you see the difference? Just a second to separate your thoughts from your character's thoughts, which sounds absurd because it's all coming from the same brain. And it's not that I think that yes and is gospel, but you can't deny that that last scenario, the way it played out, was an absolute shutdown of any potential plot or storyline that the Dungeon Master may have lined up for the players. It just kind of shut the whole thing down, didn't it? Mannerisms and Physicality. I need to put my coffee down for this one. Giving your characters a small trait that is specific to them can really help create that divide between player and character, and when you do that action, or, I know it's cliche, that accent, you become that character slightly more. I'm a fairly well-spoken English bloke, but my half-orc monk is from the rough end of town. He wasn't brought up, he was dragged up, and he's quite frankly not afraid to get into a scrap. He's loud and he doesn't think things through, and he carries himself with a certain swagger. Two of those three things, I do. I'll let you decide which ones. But these three things are resembled in my mannerisms. You know, he's a bit looser, he's a bit bigger, and yet I can already feel the accent coming out. He's a bit more direct when he's confronted by others. Whereas my deep gnome sorcerer Fitch, yes, I know that's not the optimized build, but let me have my fun. I build characters on backstory. Anyway, sorry. Tangent. Side quest. Fitch is not confident or brash. He is from a small village that was being oppressed by a bigger, more sinister clan, and everything that they mined had to be handed over as a tribute. However, one day, he mined a peculiarly odd crystal. I struggle to say peculiar. Next sentence. This crystal that he mined seemed to have a particularly odd, archaic energy that radiated from it, which subsequently allowed him to cast offensive spells, something he has never been able to do. One day, he actually lost control of his newfound powers and attacked one of his oppressors, and now not only is he on the run, he needs to seek out someone with the knowledge to help him harness the power he has found and use it to his advantage to overthrow his oppressors. My throat is really dry. But unlike Harvard, Fitch he's smaller in physique and mannerisms, opinions, and in voice. He constantly touches the crystal that he fashioned into a necklace, whether this be from nerves that it will accidentally release this arcane energy he's stumbled into, or nerves that someone is out to take it from him. I guess we'll find out when Harvard fails his death saves. What does that sentence mean? What did I take out of the... I've got a teleprompter here. What does that sentence mean? What did I take out of the script? Why is Harvard rolling death saves? Anyway, yes, Fitch is a lot smaller than Harvard and smaller in nature than myself because it creates a different kind of personality when I get to the table to play D&D as Fitch, the gnome sorcerer. Cosplay. Now, I don't cosplay. I think it's an incredible feat of artistry and an excellent demonstration of precision and patience and money, and these are all things that I don't have, quite frankly. I would be a very bad cosplayer. I would get irate and throw everything to the floor and just sack it off. I would be rubbish at cosplay. However, luckily for the casual D&D player, you don't have to go and buy foam and hot glue guns. You can simply have a small trinket that resembles your character, a cheap item of clothing that you wear, or maybe a piece of jewelry. Something that's specific to your character that, honestly, you're probably not going to wear on the day-to-day. Get this stuff from a charity shop if you plan on doing it. Whilst I was at the BBEG podcast, we worked with a couple of companies who sent us gift boxes, Bindwood Gaming and Kurimu. And I'm pretty sure that I've said that company name wrong, because I also got it wrong in the ad read at BBEG. Either way, you don't need to know, you just need to know that they do good quality products, and the links for both are in the description. Both gift boxes contained things that we thought would be fantastic as a cosplay item. Bindwood sent us a box that contained a floral hair tie, which of course Hattie took because she has more hair than me and M. Simple. However, we all said that this would be a very simple cosplay item if you wanted to play a druid.
Or perfect accessory if you... Not everyone is into dressing up for tabletop gaming. However, you know me, I encourage accessories if
Yeah.
you guys have
Yeah.
it. Just
it helps you get into character.
Yeah.
Then Kurimu sent us these gorgeous bespoke D4 necklaces, which whenever I am playing Fidge, I wear as his arcane focus to represent the crystal that he found while mining. Let's compare some actual plays when it comes to cosplay. If we look at Oxventure, then they go full out for any main series project that they are recording. If we look at Critical Role, they don't often do character-specific cosplay, but they do have, as we said, those whimsical fantasy accessories dotted around the set. However, when we look at Dimension 20, often Brennan and Abria, they will do some kind of cosplay to suit the theme of the game that they are playing. But the rest of the players don't often do anything. However, they do have the best battle maps in the YouTube scene. They just do. But then, something completely different. If we look at Dungeons and Daddies, they don't cosplay, they use theatre of the mind, they don't do anything that represents the Forgotten Realms. They just sit down and play. 5 microphones in Freddie Wong's living room, and I don't know if Freddie has a whole set in his living room, weirdly, not been there, but they just play for the fun of it, and they don't go out and spend tons of money on cosplay and accessories. But all this is just to say that don't feel you need to go all out on cosplay if you think that that's for you. Just small things that can represent your character is enough to change your mindset. And lastly, don't be afraid to commit to the bit. If you do decide to dip our collective toes into role-playing, yes, I'm sticking with that and I'm not apologizing for it. Do not be afraid to commit to the bit because you never know what you're going to get out of it. When Joey didn't know where to walk in London, what did he do?
I know. I'm gonna have to go into the map.
He put his trust into Joey that lives inside the map. He committed to his thought process to try and solve the problem, and this is a weird reference to put in a D&D video, isn't it? But I have to keep going with it, just for a couple more sentences. If the other players aren't into the roleplay aspect, then that's okay. If they're being a Chandler...
Okay, if you see a little version of me in there, kill it.
That is over now. But you feel like the Dungeon Master is offering you the chance to interact as your character, then take it. They will appreciate the energy that you give back to them, and when that energy is bouncing between the two of you, you may just have that moment where it hits you and that you truly feel for your character. In that moment, the world will absolutely fade away and it's just you and your scene partner, and afterwards, the room is feeling things, whether that be pride or sorrow, anger or relief, or any other number of emotions. You will feel like you have truly contributed to the story and influence other players' emotions. In one of my first ever Dungeons & Dragons sessions, we were playing with my friends, we were all new to the game. My Dungeon Master set up our own little individual dream sequences. My character, Lofaris, whose parents walked out on him after his tiefling bloodline decided to show that he encountered his father in this dream sequence. After a small tete-a-tete, I speak French. I don't speak French, don't ask me to speak French. The most I know is, je suis très fatigué. I am very tired. That's the only phrase I really used when I worked on a French ship for 4 months. Anyway, what were we talking about? Yes, me and the DM were having this scene, and this scene got fairly heated between the characters, not between the people, and it ended with Lafaris' father saying,
"You disgust me."
and there was just this tone in the DM's voice that got to me. It was at that moment I knew that I was embodying Lafaris. And there was a moment of silence at the table whilst everyone waited for Lafaris' response, his action. Will would have told him beneath the sigh to just f*** off. Just f*** off and leave me alone. Why did you leave me? He would have told him to f*** off straight up. However, Lafaris carries himself with a bit more pride, who also carries a little bit of a weightier grudge. And I simply said that I look him in the eyes for a split second, I nod, and I leave. And the room was in a stunned silence. Sometimes committing to the bit is choosing not to do anything. And that's my 2 cents on simple ways that you can try role-playing at the Dungeons & Dragons table. There's a lot of benefits to committing to the roleplay at the table. However, I appreciate that it can be quite daunting for some people to relinquish your thought process to a game of whimsy and make-believe, but maybe, just maybe, trying some of these things can help you get into the mindset when you play. As per usual, any tips, tricks, or thoughts on the subject, leave them in the comments below to dish out some XP to the players in our community. I'll make sure to check them out as well, and I will see you in the next session. Thank you very much.